Hi, good evening, everyone. Welcome wherever you're listening from. My name is Kalu, and this is our Money Spaces. We do our Money Spaces every weekend, or we hope to, and we talk about personal finance, money investing, the economics of the politics sometimes, but we try to keep it all in money. And today we are talking about the thorny subject of savings in Nigeria. We're going to talk about why does Nigeria not save? Let's talk about the excess crude account, the sovereign wealth fund. Try to give ourselves a bit of understanding around those topics so that way we can be better informed, perhaps to change policy down the line. But the whole idea is to inform. So welcome to you all that are here. We'll try to make it nice and sweet. And of course, if you guys have other questions you want to ask, perhaps to do with investing and the like, of course, we'll take them. But let's do this one real quick, right? So the main issue with Nigeria is that since 1960 to date, Nigeria has not been a good manager of public revenue. Successive Nigerian governments have not managed revenues of the Nigerian Federation appropriately. We're talking about the military and, of course, the civilians, the political parties. They have all shown the same, should we say, lack of effort in securing the wealth that has flowed through Nigeria. And just for background, maybe in case you're in Nigeria, Nigeria is the largest exporter of crude oil from Africa. Apart from crude oil, we have mineral resources like the gold and the rest, and they are all owned by the federation. So the way Nigeria is set up as of today is that the federation, what we mean by federation, we mean the federal, state, and local governments own the natural assets in Nigeria. So crude oil, anything under the ground that is valuable, crude oil, gold, lithium, is all owned by the federal government of Nigeria. In the past, it was not so, right? In the past, the regions owned the natural resources that they found on their land. And then the regions then paid a tax to the center. The center back then was Lagos. So in the past, for instance, if crude oil was in what we used to then call the eastern region of Nigeria, and the eastern region of Nigeria was everything you see in the south and the southeast. Edo was the Midwest, so it was its own region and all that. So when you sell crude oil in the past, the regions would retain about 47, I believe, percent. And there was an extra 20% that they retained for excise duties. So all in all, they kept about 67% of those revenues from the sale of say, crude oil and gas. Let me make it a better example for you. If you exported goods out of the port of Lagos region or the Western region, remember, Western region would retain the excise duties of the exports of goods from Nigeria. So that means if you exported, say, cocoa or groundnuts or palm oil from the port in Lagos, then Lagos State, that region, the Western region, retained the excise duties on the exports. So the regions were self-sustaining enterprises, right? And that was why you had someone like Chief Obafemi Awolowo. He was able to issue bonds way back then, build the Liberty Stadium, the Cocoa House, NTA, the first color station, I think, in Africa also, Sub-Saharan Africa, because he was able to control his revenues. He was able to issue bonds, pay those bonds from the revenues that flowed to the Western region. He was also able to do free education, which meant that he paid for the education of men that couldn't go to school. That was because the regions kept control of the natural resources and the fiscal resources, i.e. the taxes. Those were kept at the regional level. Same thing with the Eastern region. If you exported palm oil or crude oil, that was retained by the region. Same thing with the Northern region. The Northern region exported a lot of tin, a lot of groundnuts, Those were also retained by the northern region. But let's fast forward. Let's do a big jump to today. What do we have today? Today we have a federal government. So we no longer have regions that are self-sustaining fiscal entities. Now we have a federal government that controls 100% of all tax revenues from incorporated entities. What I mean is, once you incorporate a company, you are paying taxes to only the federal government. Now, the federal government collects the taxes, but the taxes are owned by the federation, right? So once you're an incorporated entity doing business in Nigeria, you pay federal taxes. You pay through FIRS, the Federal Inland Revenue Service. And the Federal Inland Revenue Service will collect VAT and taxes, i.e. income taxes on corporations, and it pays to the federation. Then the federation, being the states, local governments, and of course the same federal, would then share. So don't get confused, federal, federation. These are two separate bodies, right? So right now what we have is that if I take palm oil, if I set up Kalu Palm Oil Limited and I grow palm oil, I will pay my taxes to the federal FIRS. But those taxes are going to the federation. That's my palm oil from Abia would go to the federation. If I export my palm oil through the port of Apapa, Lagos State does not get any excise duties anymore. All Lagos is going to get is a share of the federal taxes, excise taxes collected at the ports. So both Lagos and Abia lost the powers to tax incorporated entities. This power now resides only with the federal government. If you look at the Nigerian Constitution, it's Section 80. Section 80. It says all revenues, and I'm just going to paraphrase here, all revenues that are collected by the federation will now be paid into one account. That account is the Consolidated Revenue Fund. So understand what's going on here. In the past, if I grow palm oil in Abia State or Abia region or Eastern region retained the revenues from taxing me, Kalu. If I took that palm oil produce and I wanted to export it to Holland through Lagos, then Lagos will tax me for exporting the palm oil through the port of Lagos. So the Western region would retain that excise duty. So I pay duty to the Eastern region and to the Western region. I don't pay to the federal government. There was no federal government, right? But today, there is a federal government that says, when I grow that palm oil in Abia, I pay to the federal government. When I export that palm oil, I pay to the federal government. All these revenues I'm paying to the federal government now go to this Section 80 provision called the Consolidated Revenue Fund. And that fund says that every money in that account has got to be shared, right? So I pay from Abia to Consolidated Revenue Fund. If you sell your land in Lagos, you pay VAT. It also goes to that revenue fund in Section 80, i.e. the Consolidated Revenue Fund of Nigeria. It is from that account that the money is then taken and shared. So the law, what the military guys did was very, very smart. They simply said, okay, pay all the money to one account. Then when the money got to that one account, they then said, okay, you must share it. And they're going to share it into things like land mass, responsibility of states, things that make no sense, but that's how they set it up, right? So they took away that fiscal powers from the regions and states. So what then happens is this. If you have a budget, let's go talk about the budget side now. Nigeria sells crude oil. The price of crude oil goes up and down. So a smart minister said, price of crude oil goes up and down. So when we do our budgets based on this price of crude oil, because it's fluctuating, we can't plan. So let's have what's called the benchmark price for crude oil, which means that if the price of crude oil in the international market is $100, we can put our benchmark at, say, $50 so that we plan with $50. Whatever fluctuation happens, it goes to the excess crude account. See the name excess crude, excess over the benchmark. So every year, Nigeria will say we have a benchmark price of crude, and we're going to call that benchmark price, say, we'll give whatever dollar figure we give it to based on our projections. Whatever we make in excess of that benchmark, it goes to the excess crude oil fund. So ordinarily, you would think that because the crude oil money is part of the federation money, that it would have gone to the Consolidated Revenue Fund, which is the same FARC that we're talking about, that the excess crude will go there. Which should be a normal argument, that when we sell crude oil, we sell at 100, but we set our benchmark price at 80, which means 20 goes to the excess crude account and 80 goes automatically to the Consolidated Revenue Fund. So that's how excess crude account came about. So let's just pause and say, what happens when it's in excess crude account? Is that money savings? Not really, because it's not a savings. It's just a way to what we call sterilize the income flows of Nigeria. So that money is still owned by the Consolidated Revenue Fund. Hence, you have instances where the president will then go in and spend the money. Should he spend the money? No, because it's not owned by the federal, it's owned by the federation. So you really cannot, as a federal government, just go into the ECA and take money to buy a plane. It's owned by all 37 members of the federation, i.e. the state plus Abuja plus the 774 local governments. But that's one side. What about the Sovereign Wealth Fund? How does the Sovereign Wealth Fund get money? The same way the excess crude gets money. There is no provision in the Constitution that says Sovereign Wealth Fund. There's actually no provision in the Constitution that says savings, because the Constitution says all revenues raised or received by the Federation shall be payable into this public fund of the Federation called the Consolidated Revenue Fund. So the Sovereign Wealth Fund on its own has no place really in the Constitution, right? Because when we sell crude oil, we are supposed to put the money back into this fund and share. But that doesn't make any sense, right? Because we have to save money. So President Goodluck then set up the Sovereign Wealth Fund with ₦1 billion, and he says, okay, we're going to put ₦1 billion into this fund. He did it there was no law passed, he did it to save money. And once he did, I think that was in 2004, let me get the exact date. Once he did that, right, then of course all hell, that was in 2007. That's when we started to do the excess crude account, 2007. But it was Goodluck that started the Sovereign Wealth Fund and put $1 billion in that. I believe that was in 2011 or so, if I'm correct. But once he did that, all the governors challenged him, because the plan was that we are going to take money from the excess crude account and translate it to the Sovereign Wealth Fund so that it becomes a savings. So every year we say we are going to sell oil at 80. Whatever oil sells outside at 80 goes to the Sovereign Wealth Fund. And the Sovereign Wealth Fund is able to invest that money so that when times like this, when the oil prices fall, we can take money from the Sovereign Wealth Fund as an investment towards our capital assets in the budget. That was the plan. But all the governors said no. All the governors said no, apart from one governor. The rest said no, it is illegal to save money in Nigeria. So we had to share the money, not just in the Sovereign Wealth Fund plans, but also in the ECA, the excess crude account, right? In 2010, the governors basically told Goodluck to share $6.5 billion that had accumulated in the excess crude account. And let me give you the dates, right? When Yaradua was in power, we had nearly 15 billion in that account, in the excess crude account. But the governors took him to court and he had to share that money, and we had about 6.5 billion left. So in 2 years, we had to share the money, about 8.5 billion, because the governors insisted that The money there is their money. And honestly, you might hate the governors, but they are right legally. The money there is theirs, right? So we have to share that money. In 2010, Goodluck also was in power, and we also kept on sharing that money, also out of court settlement, right? We shared $2 billion. In August 2010, the governors came back and they said there was $4 billion in their account and they had to share. We shared $3 billion as well. So the excess crude came all the way from 15 billion to about 2 billion. And it's from that 2 billion that we then sent 1 billion to the Sovereign Wealth Fund. So the long and short is this. Unless you go and fix that constitution that allows Nigeria to save, any governor can challenge you and win. Because the law says that Nigeria is a federation and that all revenues that the federation earns are going to flow to that continuity revenue fund. And it has to be shared. That's what the law says. So tomorrow a governor can wake up and say Sovereign Wealth Fund is not in the constitution and that he wants his share from that state, or his state's share from the Sovereign Wealth Fund paid to him. He can say it and he can back it up constitutionally. And there's nothing you can do. Because we haven't tried to fix the problem. We've tried to be nice and say people will be reasonable. But not all state governors are reasonable. And again, I'm not defending the state governors. No matter what you think about them, constitutionally they are correct. The monies there are not savings. The foreign reserves are also not savings. So where is Nigeria right now? We have excess crude account that has been decimated. It's now below 500,000 because it's not savings. We have the Sovereign Wealth Fund that is doing a great job saving long-term in Nigeria, investing in assets, in investments in Nigeria. I mean, they've done some great investments across the board in all regions. That fund, I suspect, if you give it some more time, the governors will go after it because they will say, well, we want our share from that money. It's our money too. And this is the problem we find ourselves. It's an easy fix. It's an easy fix. You pass a constitutional amendment and you say, we want to save a percentage of whatever revenues we sell from crude oil or from mineral resources. And once you do that, then everyone can then put money aside and save. Unless you do that, whatever gains we have made over the years will happen again. And we'll find ourselves, because the economy will always go up and down, that when a down economy, some governors will come and say, we want to share money. You think it's impossible? Let me give you a good example of what's going to happen. And after this, we're going to take questions, guys. Nigeria invested in the Nigerian liquefied natural gas. We put in $1 billion. That was Abacha. We put in $1 billion as our equity. We are the largest investor, but we only have a minority stake of 49. So we're the largest investor, but the other guys combined have 51%. So Nigeria has 49. Now it's every year they pay taxes, but they also pay dividends to Nigeria, Nigerian liquefied natural gas. So what Nigeria has smartly been doing, when we get the dividends, we don't spend it. We reinvest our dividends back into Nigerian liquefied natural gas to fund their expansion. So they pay dividends, we reinvest, they pay dividends, we reinvest, or we just keep it in an account in NNPC that will be used for reinvestment. This was a practice from Abacha to Obasanjo to Yaradua to even Goodluck Jonathan. We don't spend it in Nigerian liquefied natural gas dividends. We simply send it back to LNG, or we keep it in NNPC to be used to fund their train expansion. So it's either gone from train 1, train 2, train 3. That was what we're also investing in, right? When Buhari took over in 2015, we had the recession, the global crash, and all that. Oil prices crashed. We went to the same Nigerian liquefied natural gas dividend purse, and we took out the dollars there, and we shared it to states to pay salaries. So that was a break from the tradition of reinvesting in the liquefied natural gas. We took that money and we gave to the states, and because the states said that they were broke and they wanted to pay salaries. And I remember writing back then that we've now converted LNG from a capital asset to a recurrent asset. We'll spend their money. And can anyone show me what the state did with their money? No, it's difficult to say, right? And this is the thing. This is what I fear. unless you write things down on paper, pass as a law in Nigeria regarding fiscal revenues, fiscal responsibility, it can be challenged any day and it would be spent. Again, the sovereign wealth fund to me is one of the best investment vehicles Nigeria has ever created, but I fear for them. Because if you have another downturn like the COVID one or the 2017-2018 downturn, the governors are going to go after them. Those guys have about $1 trillion in their balance sheet. They are making revenues, give or take, of about nearly 200. I'm seeing operating profit before tax of about 102 billion. That's what they're making. And the bulk of their money, they have a lot of money. They're making investment income of about 4 trillion or so, right? They're going to go after this money and they're going to take the money I'm going to spend to pay salaries, in quote. So it's a good time to say, listen, let's talk. And whoever has, why I do this talk, that someone has a friend somewhere, you say, hey, should we amend this bill to ring fence these sort of revenues away from governors and also presidents that want to spend on quote unquote salary? Because if we don't, what has happened in the excess crude that it has gone from 15 billion, 40 billion to less than 500,000 will happen to sovereign wealth fund. It has already happened in the LNG. Don't sleep on this. All right, guys, so that's my talk and my intro. Again, the mic is open for you guys if you want to speak. I know you guys sometimes have other questions. Sure, we'll take them, but this is what I wanted to touch on so that we have a bit of understanding around the issue of the excess crude account, the sovereign wealth fund, and the savings. In summary, what am I saying in summary? Nigeria is not saving any money. There is no constitutional provision that Nigeria should save. And if we don't fix that, then we're at the mercy of the goodwill of the governors and the local government chairmen in Nigeria. And that's not a good place you want to be from experience. All right, guys, I'm done. Who wants to agree or disagree? Naysayers to the rest of the line. Olumide, yeah, thanks for that, sir. Olumide, did you want to chime in? Did I get it all correct? Did I miss out anything? Let me know. Okay, as usual, guys are shy, so they always jump into my DMs and send me messages. Let me read one or two already. Can you explain and be a bit clearer on the connection between the excess crude account, what is it saying here, and the sovereign wealth fund? Are you saying the excess crude account is the sovereign wealth? I'm not really, okay. So what I'm saying is this, right? The excess crude account was created to sterilize inflows of crude oil revenues. It's not a savings account. It's part of FARC. It is simply saying, instead of FARC to depend on uneven flows, let's have one even flow. So we pick a benchmark, and any dollar above that benchmark flows automatically to excess crude. So what should happen after that year? Should there be money in the excess crude account? I don't think so. I think the excess crude account should be rounded up to zero, right? Then you just share the balance back to the states that own them. Because it's not a savings account, it's an excess crude account. It's supposed to stay. So if you say benchmark is 80 and oil price is 100, you have 20 in the benchmark for that fiscal year. At the end of the fiscal year, what should you do to that 20? Should you keep it and keep on carrying it over? I don't think so. From that 20, you can give it the balance to the states that own it, and you can save a certain percentage. That's what I think should have happened, right? But the sovereign wealth fund is an actual savings account, i.e. it's a sovereign wealth fund. It's to save current revenues for the future. That's what we're trying to do with sovereign wealth fund. So we are saying when we earn money, the federation, not the federal now, the federation will transfer funds from revenues to sovereign wealth fund, and sovereign wealth fund then invests for the benefit of future generations and also do infrastructure investments in Nigeria. So a bit of a difference there, right? It's not expected that the sovereign wealth fund will be giving out dividends. They're not interested in current distributions. They are interested in investing for the future, for the benefit of Nigerians, because there might be a time in the future that crude oil will disappear. Maybe there will be a new battery, so nobody will buy crude oil again. Hence, we have built up investments via the sovereign wealth fund. That's the whole idea. And this is not new to Nigeria. Norway, China, Singapore, they have trillions and billions, hundreds of billions in their sovereign wealth fund, and they use it to do lots of investment, not just in their home country. It's a way to diversify. Saudi Arabia at the time owned shares in Tesla, in Uber, in Lumen. They diversify away from crude oil by buying into this or other sectors. That's what they do to give themselves cover should there be a fall in the price of crude oil. And that's exactly what Nigeria should have been doing. Angola, a few years ago, did their sovereign wealth fund and invested $5 billion as a go right there into the sovereign wealth fund. So we have a lot of catching up to do. That's exactly what I'm saying. So are you saying that we should not share? So, okay, I've addressed that point. This other guy is talking about, can you please explain what you meant by Lagos State getting taxes? Yeah, that's what, it's like what I said. In the past, this is what I mean in the past, before 1970, if you went to the port of Lagos and you exported your goods from the port of Lagos or port of Benin or Edo or Warri, you paid your taxes to the region, not to the federal government. So the regions retained excise duties on those exports. It was their money. That's how those regions were able to build. The first capital in Nigeria was Calabar. That's the first capital. Remember that Nigeria had Lagos. Then there was Nigeria. Lagos was colonized by the crown. The Queen sent her ships to Lagos and they colonized Lagos, but not Nigeria. Nigeria was colonized by the colonial office, a separate office, where they gave some white boys contract to colonize Nigeria and pay taxes. That's why the Nigerian army was called the West African Frontier Force, not Nigerian army back then, because it was a private army. So Calabar was the first port for crude, for palm oil. And then, of course, they then went from Calabar to west to the north of Nigeria, and then they amalgamated. That's why you hear amalgamation, because it was a private company that ran Nigeria. It wasn't the British government. British government only ran Lagos, right? So when we got independence in 1960 to 1963, we had a confederacy of those regions. You had the west, the east, and of course the north. And the central bank at that time shared the accumulated revenues that had been accrued to the territory of Nigeria from the British government. It was distributed to the north, east, midwest, and the western governments as their share. We still use the pound. Nigeria still used the pound when we got independent. Then we changed to the Nigerian pound before we changed to the Nigerian naira. So the regions, as of 1970, it wasn't that far away. They retained the revenues from the sale of gold, crude oil, and even the excise taxes from the exports from the port. Those ports were not federal ports. They were, when you exported through there, you paid it to the region, i.e. Western or Eastern region. That's the point I'm making. So we've gone from that to seemingly a unitary government masquerading as a federation, where the federal government basically does all the taxes. So in Nigeria, all the taxes today are now done by the federal government, right? They set the rates, they even collect VAT. So the federal government, understand what's happening, this federal government is collecting taxes on consumption in the state and then distributing to other states. It makes no sense in a federation or in a federal republic. But that's what we have. That's what I mean by that. So you want to go back, if you go back to change that in the constitution, you don't even have to do that. You just simply have to go to the constitution and say, we do not want, remove that clause that says all revenues must be paid to the consolidated revenue fund. Make it more specific. You can say revenues will be paid, but 10% to be saved or something like that. So that gives the president or whoever is in power the means to save long term in Nigeria. Can you imagine a company without savings? That's how Nigeria is. The foreign reserves are not owned by Nigeria. Distinction. I'm reading the question here now. Someone is asking, what about the foreign reserves? The foreign reserves are owned by the Central Bank of Nigeria. I know it's a bit confusing, but the Central Bank of Nigeria is not Nigeria. It is not the Federation. It is just a bank. And that bank pays exporters and importers. So when you buy iPhones from America, you are not the one paying. Even though you remit your money, it's not you paying. Your money goes to the central bank. Then the central bank pays the American central bank or the American correspondent bank. That's how we settle our deals internationally. That's what's going on. So those monies you see in the central bank are claims on imports, loans, and oil sales. They make up that 47 billion. That's why you hear the central bank always tell you this can cover X months of imports. So the money in the central bank, the foreign reserves, are not savings. They are not owned by the Federation, neither are they owned technically by Nigeria. They are kept by the bank to settle claims of importers and exporters to Nigeria. So that is not savings. That 40 billion or so is not savings. The only real savings Nigeria has is the money in the sovereign wealth fund of Nigeria. Apart from that, there is no other investments anywhere. The gold, yes, I hear you. I get you. Dayo, I got you. The gold in the central bank is the reserves of the central bank. So they can keep gold, they can keep dollars, they can keep whatever they like. But it's not owned by the Federation. The gold you see there, the central bank buys that gold and converts her assets from Naira to gold. It's not owned by Nigeria. The central bank is technically not Nigeria, in terms of those reserves. That's not how it works, right? I can send you some. Yeah, gotcha. Mr. Augustine, you've got the floor, sir.
Yeah, Carlo, good evening.
How are you doing today?
And over time, let's go for that. I heard all you said about how the federal government collects taxes on consumption from the states. Well, it makes me curious because I remember recently the governor of my state instituted a suit, and I think it's at the Supreme Court, contesting this collection. So I'm curious, must it be either through the courts or by constitutional amendment for this kind of imbalance to be reversed? Thank you.
Yeah, you're right. It's not in the Constitution. It's not in the Constitution. There is nowhere, no powers that give the FIRS powers to collect consumption taxes. What happened was consumption taxes, i.e. VAT, was done under Abacha. So because it was a military regime and the military ran things as a unitary government, they simply told the FIRS to collect it. That was what happened. But it's like payee. Just imagine, for instance, Lagos State Internal Revenue Service will go and collect payee from you, then share to another state. Does that make any sense? People will be like, this doesn't make any sense. How can you collect tax in Ikeja, Lagos State Internal Revenue Service collect tax in Ikeja and share to Abia? It doesn't make any sense. It's the same with VAT. VAT is a tax on final consumption. So if you notice what was happening, Governor Wike went to the courts. Then FIRS tried to do a constitutional amendment to insert it in the constitution, and that did not go through.
Yes.
So that's why they were trying to be smart by rushing to put it in there. But Lagos, of course, Lagos State will never allow anyone change that law because they know eventually the VAT is going to come back to them. Time will tell. Eventually, Lagos State is going to get their 100% VAT. Because the bulk of VAT in Nigeria is from Lagos. Why it's from Lagos is a different discussion, but it's from Lagos, and eventually they will get it back. Anyone trying to touch that is going to hear from Lagos, and it will maybe part of the Western media. Yeah. So that helps, right?
Yeah, it does.
Okay.
So ideally, the states should receive their consumption tax.
The states should collect. So remember, that's why I gave the history, right? When Nigeria was founded in 1960, Every state there's a region that had an embassy in London. An embassy was in London for a region. Nigeria was founded as a confederacy. The Central Bank of Nigeria back then shared the revenues that had been accrued to Nigeria from when the British came to 1960 to the four regions. And all those regions were doing business amongst themselves. That's why they were collecting excise duties in Lagos. So if you export through Lagos, you pay Lagos, when I mean Lagos, Western region, excise duties. That's how it was set up. So of course, VAT was collected by the states, of course. But that's only a small one. But gradually, what happened was that when you had the Civil War, you had the military coming, and gradually they started to chip away. So what they did was they said, okay, they reduced the amount of money that the states could collect and retain. They reduced it, then they introduced FARC. When they introduced FARC, they then said, okay, pay every money to FARC. Then they then changed how you share the money through FARC. So in the past, derivation was 67%. So if River State exports gross crude palm oil, not crude palm oil, River State would retain 67 all in, I'm counting everything. They retain 6-7% from the growth, from the taxes, from the excise exports of that produce. They retain it. There was no FARC. Now you created a FARC, which is the Consolidated Revenue Fund, aka you share it through FARC. I'm just calling it FARC because people know that better. When you create FARC, you then change how FARC will pay out. So it's like saying Dangote has money, but you tell Dangote you can only put your money in First Bank. Then you go to First Bank and tell First Bank you can only give money out to people that bring you this kind of check. So does Dangote have money anymore? No matter how much money Dangote has, he has to put it in First Bank. And First Bank can only pay out if you present a certain kind of check to it. So what kind of check can you present in Nigeria? Population, land mass. Yeah, correct. So derivation then went to 13%. Let me give you a good point. Before we had the federal government of Nigeria, when we had the Nigeria before the federal government of Nigeria, the federal government got 13%. So the regions paid the federal government 13%. So now it's reversed. The federal is now paying the regions 13%.
Precisely.
That's what has happened. It's not had nothing to do with oil. It's really the military boys were trying to be smart because the military got power but had no money. So when they got power after the Civil War, the federal government they had no money. So to take money, they basically did all these decrees. I think it was eventually Muritala Mohammed that cancelled all the revenues flowing to states. Gowon was chipping away. Gowon would take away 5%, 5%, 5%. But Muritala just said 100%. But still, the state still had power. I think it was Obasanjo that then created Consolidated Revenue Fund and FARC. That just killed it off completely. What has happened is this. I just posted on my timeline pictures of Kano pyramids and palm oil plantations in Imo State and Kano State. Why agriculture failed in Nigeria is because of FARC. It is FARC that killed agriculture, not crude oil.
No incentives for the states to invest in it anymore.
That is true. In the past, if I set up a palm oil company in Abia, the state will make me succeed so they can tax me and retain 6-7%. But when you created FARC, the state don't have to worry about me anymore. They can simply go to federal government and get the same 6-7% without paying for tax collection. So you see what happened. If I'm a state governor, I would actually like it. I don't have to chase Kalu. I just chase Abuja. I get this even more money. So let Lagos State be doing their business. Lagos State will build a road. they will build a deep sea port, but that money from that deep sea port will go to the federal government. Then I will sit quietly in my state and collect the money. So I laugh at when I see the crude oil that they quote unquote discovered in, what state is that? Where did you just find crude oil in the north? Was that good? Bauchi. I told my friend that you guys will only get 13% of the oil. He said, what do you mean? I said, you're only going to get 13% of this oil. That's what you're going to get, 13% of this oil found in Bauchi. The rest is going to come to Abia, Taraba, Sokoto, Lagos, because it has to be shared. Then he kept quiet. So it makes you lazy. No state is lazy. But if I don't have to call, imagine if you tell Lagos State now, imagine if you go to Lagos State governor and tell Lagos State governor, all these things you are doing, collecting taxes, chasing people around, don't worry, just sit down and I'll give you ×2 of the tax revenues. He says, what up to? He said, don't have to do anything. Just sign this bill. You get ×2 of your tax revenues without doing anything. Would he sign? He'll sign. And when you do that, what have you done? You've killed. Why should Lagos State go and build power in Java Tech? It doesn't make any sense. They are still going to get the same money ×2 without investing. So they won't build roads, they won't build power, they won't build deep sea ports because they are still going to get their money.
Let me throw this in. You said for Lagos, maybe as a particular case, they are not going to worry too much about chasing this bad issue, that they are sure their money will come back. Can you expatiate a bit?
Yeah, because in the end, we have never challenged it because no one has challenged it. It's just like derivation. Remember that Nigeria, we fight fights one at a time. When was derivation challenged? Derivation was taken away by Murtala Mohammed and Obasanjo. They made it 0% and they created FARC. From that time, it was only challenged during Obasanjo's time. It was Delta State, Mr. Ibori, that took the federal government to court that the crude oil is owned by the state. So the state went back to court to challenge that ruling of Murtala Mohammed to take crude oil from 6.7 to 0. So Obasanjo then came and said, no, he agrees that the oil in the state is owned by the state, but he was arguing that the oil found on the high seas still it belongs to the federal government. That's why you had this
offshore.
Correct. You now had offshore. Onshore was not the debate. The debate was that the oil is not owned by the federation, but by the state, because there is no federation without a state. There is nobody called Nigeria. There are states called Lagos that have people in them, and those people make up Nigeria. That was the debate. So he then did onshore, offshore, blah, blah, blah. And in the end, they then won that. So they then said, okay, we're going to give you 13% onshore, offshore. That 13% was to go to the local government, not the state. It was to go to the local government, but the states kidnapped it and took it away. So that was the 13% that corrected that oil one. The next fight was this VAT. But because the guys that could fight this fight were getting money from 13%, they didn't focus anymore on 13%. Why did Lagos fight for VAT? Because Lagos was the federal capital. So by default, they got federal investments in Lagos. So why would they fight for VAT to go to Lagos when Lagos is getting more than VAT? Do you get my point? They were in Lagos. Lagos was getting more than the share of Lagos VAT because the federal government was in Lagos. So why would Lagos State fight for VAT to come to Lagos when they're getting more? But once the federal government left Lagos, they did not give Lagos a fund to take care of their assets. Lagos State government should get a special derivation from the federal government to take care of legacy assets. They should get that. They didn't get it. So they're obviously going to go after VAT. And VAT was just passed, remember, VAT was just passed under Abacha. Yeah, so that's why it wasn't fought. So now it was passed under Abacha, then they said to get it. So over time, you remember that Mr. Tinubu was under federal issues for a long time. He was fighting opposition. He had no time to do this. So now that they've gotten their act together, clearly they're going to go after VAT. Clearly, that's their fight. They're going to go after VAT. And I can, I
believe they will join the suit with the investor government.
Correct, and they'll win it because it has no provisional. There's no. It's a military rule. It's not has no. There's no way you can defend taxing Lagos and take the money to Abia. There's no way. It's Lagos money. So get ready.
So much.
Okay, my DMs are blowing up. Let me let you go. Yeah, I've answered this question. Guys, yeah, if you want, I prefer, so I have to, if I'm reading, I can just ask a question and I'll answer you. But let me take this a very interesting one. But Lagos is now an oil producing state. This is also true. I saw Lagos as an oil producing state. And for a long while, I was a bit curious about Lagos. Lagos 13% is paid outside the 13% of the other states. I'm not sure why they do it that way. You see Lagos, then you see the other states. I don't know why, but I'm not sure they fix it. But so Lagos is now an oil producing state, yes. And they're going to fight with their VAT, yes. So that's the point I'm making. Yes, now they will fight for it because there's no way they can grow and expand without getting a share of their tax revenue. So going forward, remember that if all this changes, many states will have to also change the way you do business. FARC is going to be is under threat in my view, right? You're going to see two wings will appear. One wing will say we want to increase the power of the states. The other wing will say we want to actually reduce the power of the states to get these tax revenues. And whoever wins that fight, I think is going to be based on who is the guy in the office. If a certain guy is going to be sworn in as a president, then that would win. If one that guy is going to be sworn in, then that's what's going to happen. But there's no case here. There's no case here. It's just who is in power will determine how this case will go faster or slower. I actually don't get the foreign transaction you said CBN does on behalf of people, sir. Do you mean the money paid for importation goes to CBN? And yes, that's what I'm saying. When you import or when you export, it is the central bank of the country that is trading. If I'm importing a Honda car from Japan, what happens? I go to my bank, I do Form M, right? Then my bank will get dollars and my bank will send the dollars to the Japanese bank. But what really happens is that your bank sends that dollars through central bank to the Bank of Japan through the bank. That's how they are talking. So when you hear, let me give you a good example. In the 1980s, Nigeria was broke. Nobody agreed to send us any imports anymore. Do you think Nigerians didn't have money to import? Nigerians had dollars, but we couldn't pay. They cut us off from the international market. So we couldn't open LCs to import things from other countries. We had to do barter. But Nigerians had dollars in their pocket, but you can't trade. The central bank of that country will not allow their banks to trade with your central bank. So we couldn't trade. So the central bank, when you see that $40 billion foreign reserves, it doesn't mean Nigeria has 40 billion. When you want to buy palm oil from Nigeria, you pay your exporter in Nigeria, Abi. So the money will go to central bank, then your bank. That's the 40 billion you are seeing. So it is that money, when you supply him his palm oil, then your bank will release that money to you. That's why central bank will tell you that you have to bring that money for exports back to central bank or they will ban you. It's supposed to go to central bank. So why aren't people taking the money to central bank? Because central bank is saying they will only pay you, is it 460? Meanwhile, you can get about 700 from on the streets of Lagos. That's why you see the foreign reserves are down. Because the exporters are not paying to the central bank. So the central bank is the one that is supposed to pay your central bank and your bank, not really you. Does that make any sense, sir? Okay. Then, Jesus, man. Yeah, so most of these questions I'm asking, I've already addressed it. Maybe you're just coming in. We have about 15 minutes to go, guys. I was going to just do an hour here. So I prefer you request to speak so you can talk. But if I have to read it, I have to look for the question and answer it. If Lagos State gets, yes, that was I don't mean Lagos State. Let me just clarify, guys. I'm talking about the region, Western region. It wasn't Lagos State, it was Western region. So when I say Lagos, I'm referring to the region. It was the region that retained excise duties, not Lagos. But I'm using Lagos as an example because back then there was no, all the states were not there. Lagos State is the Western region, Abia is Eastern region. That's the point I'm making. So it's not the states per se. The ports were in the Western region, not Lagos State back then. Mr. Obuma, hi, how you doing, sir?
I'm doing very fine, sir.
What's up? Go ahead.
Good evening, sir.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yes. The question I want to ask is, how does somebody understand the economic situation going on in Nigeria and then translate it to investment on the stock exchange? Especially when it comes to agricultural sectors and all those other sectors.
That's a great question. That's a good question. So you see, the way what you've actually explained is how you should invest, right? So if I want to invest, you see, they asked one lady, there was a lady that was robbing banks. And they asked her, why are you robbing banks? And she said, because that's where the money is. So the same thing, if you want to invest where the money is. So let me just give you a good example. If you want to invest in the stock market, you pull up the federal budget. On the federal budget, you see that the government wants to invest in diversification of agriculture. Okay, what does that mean? That means they want to grow other sectors apart from crude oil. Okay, so what other sectors do we have from crude oil? We have rubber, we have palm oil, we have gold, we have all this stuff. Okay, so what will I do? I'll go to the stock market and I'll look for companies that are selling agricultural products and that are exportable. Can I find any? Maybe I'll find Okomo Oil. Maybe I'll find Presco. Maybe I'll find a company that supplies that gold company in Kebbi or Ogun State their diesel. So I'm looking for the companies that will benefit from government policy. Then I'm trying to buy that stock at a good price. The trigger for me is the policy of the government saying that I want to invest in them. Does that make sense to you? Same thing with banks. If you hear cashless banking, what does that mean to you? Cashless banking. That means that non-bank players are going to have a bigger say in the financial sector. So if I want to invest in a bank, I want to look for those fintech that are coming up to invest in them. I want to look for the tech companies that are coming up and invest in them. That's how you want to do it.
Wow. That's beautiful. Thank you very much.
Okay, you're welcome.
Okay. So please, one more question, sir.
Yeah, sure.
What about taking advantage of those who offer their sell prices, like the one MTN did last year and the one Geregu Power Supply also did?
So, yes, but you have to do your research. You see, when I sell you my company, I want to make money. You want my company. So I'm always going to sell you at a price that's very, very high because I want to make money off you. So even though the company is a good company, at what price? Let me put it this way. If I told you to buy Messi today for $1 billion for your club, will you buy him for $1 billion? No, first of all, would you buy Messi? Would you buy Messi for your club? Yes or no? Would you buy Messi?
Well, I will look at his...
No. Hold. Simple question. Would you buy Messi today? Yes or no?
Yes. Looking at the kind of...
No worries. You buy Messi, but at what price?
Yes, for business sake.
At what price? If I told you to buy Messi at 1 million naira, would you buy?
1 million naira.
1 million naira. Would you buy?
Will Messi agree to be bought at 1 million naira?
Will you buy him at 1 million naira?
If he can be bought at 1 million naira.
So you would buy him at 1 million naira?
Yes.
Okay. Will you buy him at $1 billion? $1
billion.
Yeah, dollars.
If it is possible.
Would you buy him?
But yes.
You would buy him.
I will consider the expected.
Will you buy him at $100 billion?
100 billion? No.
Yeah. Okay. So what's the difference? The difference is that you want to buy Messi, but there's a price you will not pay. Why wouldn't you pay that 100 billion? Because the expected payback can never be 100 billion. You could buy Messi at $1 million because you know you can easily sell shirts for more than 1 billion. So it's the same principle with stocks. Would you buy MTN? Yes. At what price will you buy MTN? If you buy MTN at 100 naira, the payback might be better for me over 5 years. But if I buy MTN at 1,000 naira, can they pay me back? The price of a stock, right, is the future value. Sorry, is the present value of all the future dividends in future. That's what the price is. If you see a stock price at 10 naira, it means that if I discount the present value of all the future dividends, it's going to give me 10 naira. That's what it means. So for you want to decide, is 10 naira today cheap or expensive today? The same way you said you will not buy Messi for 100 billion, but you buy Messi for 1 million, is the exact same thing you are going to do. It's called calculating the intrinsic value. If you go online, you see it's very complicated. You calculate the intrinsic value of Messi. So if the intrinsic value of Messi is lower than the offer price of Messi, you buy him. If the intrinsic value of Messi is higher, then you don't buy. That's exactly what stock trading is all about. Yeah? All right, my brother.
Yes, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Mr. Carlo Aja.
Yeah.
It was a wonderful session.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much.
Oluwasegun, hey, how you doing? You got the floor.
Hey, greetings, Carlo. Long time, man. Always a pleasure to see your space.
Same here, sir.
Huge benefit. Always appreciate you. Question a little more directly, kind of building with what the other gentleman just spoke of, but a little bit more specific. Not the most attractive. Most people don't like talking about it, but it's necessary. I'm very interested in military type operations. And I was curious. In Nigeria, I looked at some of the startups. A lot of the startups are focused on a lot of fintech. I don't see a lot of the attention put on military. Just wondering from your perspective, from what you've seen, first of all, how much of the GDP is devoted towards military-related operations? And for people who are interested in this specific space, let's say, for instance, a common thing is offering practical protection for, let's say, troops and infantry. There are applications that you can do for hardening, clothing, cars, whatever. But some of these applications are actually applicable to VIPs. So I'm just wondering, how is the startup space for military-related startup concepts investing?
So let's just to clarify, I like military or protection. What are we talking about now? Could you clarify?
Both. Okay, but for instance, every person here can probably go get a drone. There are applications where if you are in a situation, and again, this is probably more related to the military contractor, I'm not sure how many in the room, but if you're in a situation, you have very little ordinance to get you back to support of your team, but you can get access to assets on the ground. Let's say if you want to weaponize a drone, a standard drone that you get off the shelf, things like that, or if you want to have different types of materials that can allow you to take a lot of force, a lot of impact from kinetic weapons, or if you want a situation where, let's say, there's a small group that needs to have a simple surface-to-ground system or a surface-to-air system, something like that. Just wondering, is there a market for that kind of thing? Startup space in Nigeria.
Yeah, and I think you want to keep it very, very simple, right? What's the attraction for a manufacturer in Nigeria? The only attraction is going to be cheap labor. Because if take an existing platform, let's say you had an existing platform, let's just pick an MRAP, nothing complicated, an MRAP. You have MRAPs in America doing nothing. You have them in Iraq wasting away. Let's say you brought the MRAPs here and you're going to you're going to refurbish them and then resell them. You would make a lot of money because you had lower cost welding and all that here, as long as you got good power, you could then have a business to say, pick what's happening right now in Ukraine. They are looking for companies that would refurbish NATO equipment sent to Ukraine at a cheap cost. Let's say you had a warehouse or you had a factory somewhere on the coastline of Nigeria and you were near Europe. You could bring all the scrap to Nigeria. You could have guys welding in plates, putting thermal lights, i.e. reassembling that same stuff, right? Why could they do it in Nigeria? Because you have cheaper labor. They're not doing any addition of technology. It's just to assemble. The problem is power, right? The same power that other manufacturers face. If you are able to get cheap power with cheap labor, then manufacturing in Nigeria is wonderful because you get your funding. The US would fund you, NATO would fund you, but it's really a question of the business environment in Nigeria. Let's talk about the other part which you really didn't go into, where I think it has more promise, private protection. Nigeria is going to get slowly getting to that Brazil stage where you're going to have this soft, sophisticated crime where they just kidnap you in a Lagos street and you pay $1 million and you're out the next day, right? So I don't see any. I see guys that do security companies that do this. People wear uniform and they guard your house. I've not really seen like they have in South Africa where you can hire a company, they can harden your house, put in barriers, put in a safe room, give you those things that you press and alarms flash, and a private company would come there within 3 minutes. Evacuation, medical evacuation. I'm not really seeing a company doing that. CCTV. Private CCTV, they put those things on the road that if you press a button, the road shuts down. You can't drive out of the estate. That's a huge.
What about hardening of clothing? Standard clothing that people wear every day.
That's a small market, big margin, small market. You want to go for big margins, right? You don't want to do. Is unique. Dangote will buy it, but will I buy it? If I had in my clothes and the car is hit with 911, what does it do? But if you imagine if you go to an estate, there are estates in Lagos, and you go and you say, see, every house in this estate, you pay me 5 million, I will harden your house. You press a button, bars will come down, doors will shut down, no one can come in, no one can come out. I'll build you a safe house in that house. Even if armed robbers come, they cannot breach that safe house. You will not meet demand. You will meet demand. Even safes, just say, I'm going to have a safe for you for your documents. You put something in that safe, a fire comes, you burn that house, your safes are secure. That's also defensive. You won't meet demand. You can't meet demand. So keep it very simple, like on your phones. Now people are hacking phones, right? I'm going to give you a software, your phone is unhackable. Everything, your system, your laptops, your phones, unhackable. Your kids' phones, unhackable. That's where you have a ton of folks trying to buy from you. If you just take an unhackable phone to Nigeria today, you'll meet demand. Make sense?
Oh no, sure. And I know your gun law is a little different than they are here in the States. We have a lot of guns here. And maybe this isn't the forum for that, but I mean, if there are people who have the ability and they have the right licenses to carry, is that also another area or not really?
No, the laws here are very. You can have a pump action through licensing, but that's it. You can't carry a 45. You can't do concealed. You can't do all that. So yeah, unless they pass laws, I want them to change that laws. I want Nigerians to have the right to carry, to own.
Now you're speaking, bro.
I tell you, if you have that law, see that law, if you have that law, corruption goes the next day. Corruption will disappear the next day if Nigerians have the right. And people will drive very, very nice. Everybody's going to be polite. You go to Texas, you see how they drive in Texas, no one just going to come and cut you off. And, no one come to your house and say he's doing party. Then you'll come and block the street, And then, of course, you don't have anyone stopping you because you have dreadlocks. They're not going to set your back because you have dreadlocks. You are parking, he's parking. So
out here in Texas, it doesn't go out like that, bro. I carry every day. So
I wish that law was passed, So if you go to the polling booth, right, then no one can snatch any boxes because everybody's packed. So we all sit down like nice people, eat roasted chicken, vote, and go home. Everybody has sense. So we're all polite. Yeah, because, things have to change in the country because and countries, Americans are just mad. But many countries carry and no one gets shot. Go to Israel, everybody's packing in Israel. Go to Switzerland, everybody's packing in Switzerland. It's just Americans, there's a mental problem in America going on. It has nothing to do with the guns. If you take away guns, they will start killing people with spoons or something like that. So it's really not the guns per se, but I wish they would allow in South Africa, people carry. And but
I'll just say this one piece on the whole. Here in America, there's obviously a problem because you have more guns than people. I'm not going to go into why that is or why that is, but the reality is this: bad people, and let me just say this very clearly: bad people don't follow laws. So it doesn't make a difference how many restrictions you have. I did a little experiment. I went to Chicago, and I carry every day in Texas. But I went to Chicago to see where I can physically carry, and it boiled down to me walking in the middle of a street because of how the signs work. So they have more restrictions there, but the likelihood of me getting shot in Chicago is a lot higher in Texas because of what you just said.
Yeah, read. The book to read. His book, Lot, More Guns, Less Crime. He's right. If criminals, why do criminals go to schools to shoot children? Why do they go to schools? Because in America, you cannot carry a gun to a school. So they know there are no guns. They go to soft targets. Exactly. Why don't they go shoot police stations?
Or gun ranges.
Yeah, go there. Go and shoot a police station. They wouldn't. They will go to a school because they know in America, schools, you cannot carry a gun to a school. So they know. So they are brave punks and they go there. But yeah, so I would say keep it simple. Keep it simple. Nigeria it's a huge market. You want to do margins, right? But you also want to do market size. Nigeria works best if things are cheap and accessible and last long, right? So bulletproof vests are heavy. I've seen people carry, in America, I've seen bulletproof knapsacks for kids. I think it's a stupid idea. It won't work in Nigeria because we don't do school shootings. What we're worried about in Nigeria is this: you're in go slow, someone comes to your car and says, give me your wallet. That's what we're worried about. That quick, fast crime on the go slow, or you are trapped and they kidnap you. Can you imagine just kidnapped a few guys just a few days ago? So that's what we're worried about. You are in your house, someone knocks the door by 2 a.m. You see 30 guys outside your house by 2 a.m. That's what we're worried about. So safe homes, communication gadgets, things you can harden a house to prevent, to buy time for the occupant before the cops come. That's what will work in Nigeria.
Right, I really appreciate that, bro. I think I never thought about it that way. The whole thing with going after the larger market, that's pretty cool. I appreciate that.
You're welcome, man. You're welcome. Yeah, Kimberly, what's happening, man?
Yeah, I don't really have a question per se. I think I was listening to the last person who asked the question. I get the impression that he's trying to ask something like PMCs, private military contractors.
Yeah.
So what do you think about that?
That's big market. Listen, I'm on some channels that I follow this Ukraine war. They are looking for people that will go to Ukraine. They will pay you money, they are looking for people. They are looking for, I see the ads all over. They are advertising in the UK. I saw the ad on my phone. If you can walk, they will take you to Ukraine, they pay a lot of money to go fight. So BlackRock and the rest, Nigeria, they'll say we have security companies, just unemployed people with uniforms. If you are able to train real security guards, you get graduates, you train them on first aid, you train them on how to talk, how they dress, personal protective services. Well-trained people. That's money there. I see now, if you go to weddings, you see them they always get guys that look muscular. Muscular doesn't mean security. There's such, when you are here and when you go back and you see how they do security, it's different. Venues, people could go for a venue, there's no crowd control, and all that. There's a big market for it. And once you start it, then regulation would help you. So Lagos State, for instance, today can't pass a law on crowd control because there's no one to enforce it. But if you had a firm that says we can enforce crowd sizes, when you watch the English Premier League, you see those guys wearing yellow. Once 3 people go in, 1 person goes in. 3 go in, 1 person goes, because they have to control the crowd. But here we don't have the means. That's why we stopped playing games in Nigeria, because people died doing a league game, and we just didn't pass those policies to move it on. So private PMCs, just even civilian crowd control, civilian personal protective services, all this, they are non-lethal protection, tasers, what's called pepper sprays, all that kind of stuff. Big market in Nigeria. I went to Abuja, I saw a whole store selling vibrators, sex toys, vibrators. That store can easily sell pepper sprays and the rest for ladies, and they would buy it. Alarm that you can press. If the guy tries to do anything to you, you just press an alarm, blind the guy's ears or whatever. So lots of market is here. Nigeria is a big market. Lots of middle class people are stuck here, so they have to live here. You can put like AirTag. You can get an AirTag, and you can weave it into your kid's shoes, your kid's socks, and if he's kidnapped, God forbid, you know where he is. AirTags, something as simple as that. A SIM card. You can weave that SIM card into your kid's hair. Nobody will see it. Into your kid's skin. Now you can put the tags into the body. And if that kid is kidnapped, you know where they are. You can put those tags on your employees, so you know where people are. If they're at work, they wear it. Like your cook, your very, very close people that work with you, your cook, your driver, your security guard, they should be wearing tags, so you know where they're going to. So that way you can track their movement. When they're on the job, or not when they're at home, you say you should wear tag. When they're on the job. So it's a bit of, you know where who is with the CCTV. You sort of create that, I'm watching you, big brother. Because that's where all this information comes. People come to your house to work, they get information, and they go sell it out, and the next thing you know, a kid gets kidnapped. So all that are like areas we're not looking at in Nigeria. And we have a lot of manpower in Nigeria. Lots of people are unemployed. I will not ask you to send to fight war, but even just to protect. In Israel, when they fight all these their normal wars, they import a lot of Thai people to work in the ports, to work in the oil, because the soldiers go to fight. So those guys take over the civilian duties. They don't fight, but they are working. And it's from Thailand, right? So you could have a situation where you're an employment agency, you tell Israel, if you guys ever fight this your war, I can bring in 10,000 vetted Nigerians that will work on your railways and your ports. That's money right there for you. But you know, with what is systems, processes, getting the things right, we really don't do that a lot in Nigeria. So we're chasing exports, cashew. All these other things are there, you know. All right, guys. Hey, mate. Hey, welcome, man. Sorry, guys. I can't read the DMs. I don't even know to start. Sorry about that. I can't read the DMs again. I'm so sorry. All right, guys. We're going to stay here for an hour. I don't know if anyone has any closing remarks. I think we're all good. Limde didn't talk today. What's happening? You're shy. Limde, I was going to ask you about this. If you can, what's happening to, should I name the name here? That crypto exchange, I don't call the name. What's happening? Are we safe? That crypto exchange, what's happening? Are we safe? Well, you can DM me if you want. I really want to know if that's crypto exchange, did it go down or it's just FUD? Because I don't know again, man. All right, guys. So I think we'll have to call today if we're done. I thank you all guys for listening. So we want to start after my co. I have if you guys know, I have a co-presenter. We want to start, like we said, from next month. We want to start when we are analyzing Nigerian companies, also international companies. So we want to pick stocks and we'll just talk about them. Is it a good buy? What are the fundamentals saying and all that kind of stuff? We want to do that, right? We want to start with Nigerian banks and just every week do something like that around Nigerian companies. So we want to do that next week. He's traveled, so when he gets back, we'll set it up. So at least one space a week, we talk where to put your money, right? This is not just what's going to be I and him. We'll tell you guys the sector we're going to look at. You can send us your questions, and then we can take them. That's one thing we want to get done this coming year. So we're a bit more direct in telling you about companies. It won't be recommendations, but if you listen in, you would hear us talk about what makes sense in the fundamentals and what does not make sense. So that way you can reach your own conclusion. That's what we're trying to do on that. But yeah, we'll see. So again, we started off talking about fiscal revenues, and we ended up talking about personal protection. Interesting space all the time. Thank you so much, guys, for hopping in here. Again, if you are ever in my neck of the woods, call me and see me. If you ever want a great book to read about your personal finance, remember that I have a book out. It's a great book. All my years of experience, I put it all in one book just for you. And it's chapterized, which means you can read just one chapter. If you want to know about real estate, just read that chapter of real estate. If you want to know about how to budget, just read that one chapter. I think you should get it and read it. It's very good. If I didn't write it, I'll buy it. I think you should, guys. Very good. All right. Take care of yourselves, guys. You guys stay safe. Nigeria, I had some headlines in the last 48 or so, not too friendly. But take care of yourselves, guys, and stay well. Till we meet again, maybe next week or the week again. You guys take care and bye.